Hi, welcome to Live Right Tonight. I am Brandi and I have the privilege of having Joe Zango. How are you doing?
Good, good. How you doing, Brandi?
Good. Um, First of all, you are the carpet guy.
Be wise. I'm just,
Yes.
I'm your average Joe.
Please tell me a little bit about yourself before we get into it.
Let's see. Okay. I feel like I'm on a dating show. Let's see. I'm 48 years old. My mom's American. I don't know. My parents were both school teachers. I'm 48. I own a small business in Michigan, here in Michigan. I started my business 13 years ago. I'm a dad. I have a 10-year-old boy. I live here on the east side, and I grew up in Sterling Heights, and I was a troublemaker for at least the first half of my life, maybe a little bit longer, maybe two-thirds. Took me a while to grow up. I was in my mid-30s before I even started to grow up. So I'm 48 now, so that gives you a little bit of a history, I guess.
Okay. Well, I have known you since the night days of you were a promoter back then.
Yep.
Um Tell me a little bit about where you felt that what made you want to start the Carpet Guys? Like, what brought you the
Oh God,
inspiration of doing all that?
I was at a desperate spot in my life. I actually didn't have any plan of starting a company that would, provide work for over 150 people. I had no idea it was ever going to turn into what it is. I just needed to figure out a way to make money because my license was revoked and nobody was going to hire me. So at 35 years old, I was homeless. I was squatting in my buddy's basement of a house that was foreclosed because my house got foreclosed after I got my second DUI. After, I had two DUIs pretty close to each other, so my license got revoked. I was living in Arizona, and at first I was still working for that company, but I was driving illegally. And then I had a really close call where I made an illegal turn and a cop made a U-turn and I took off from the cop in Arizona and I got away and they never found out who I was. And I said, you know what, I'm 35 years old running from the cops like I did when I was a teenager. I said, I can't do this crap. And so
Right.
I came back to Michigan and prior to moving to Arizona, I had some direct sales experience when I was 19 in my early 20s. In fact, my sponsor, Tim Clark, he and I both worked for Kirby Vacuum Cleaners and we sold vacuum cleaners. So I've known Tim since I was 19 years old. And so he and I learned how to sell door to door from knocking on doors. And so I always had the background of direct selling. And then I sold cars for a little while. And then I, I got into selling floor covering. And when I worked for Empire Today, used to be called Empire Home Services back then. 58823, you know that number.
Yep.
I worked for them for a few years, and I became a really good salesperson for them, even though I had no flooring experience at that point. And then I moved out to Arizona for a greater opportunity, and then that's when I got my second DUI, and I wound up losing everything. I had a house in Michigan that was almost halfway, two-thirds of the way paid off, and I remember thinking, man, by the time I'm 40 years old, my house is going to be paid off. I've got a Cadillac. I've got, two girlfriends that both know about each other. It's cool. I thought I was living the perfect bachelor life, and but I was out of control, and I was a functioning alcoholic. I would get drunk every single day, at night, and I would be completely wasted. But by 8 o'clock in the morning, I was able to go to work, even if I was hungover. I functioned well. I could still sell. I was a good salesperson. I wasn't originally. I became a good salesperson from a lot of practice. But when I lost my opportunity to work for someplace else, and my house got taken away, and then my car got repossessed, I was left with nothing but a house arrest, Heather, and my life was really upside down. And so when I came back to Michigan, I had a friend of mine that had a flooring company, and he just did hardwood floors. And I said, well, how about we do partners? And I do the carpet end of it, and you do the hardwood flooring. And so we started doing that for about 2 or 3 months. But he and I just didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, so we wound up parting ways and going our own ways. And he stayed with hard flooring, and I just came up with the name the Carpet Guys because when I would knock on someone's door, Mom, the carpet guy's here. And so so that's where the
Perfect.
name came from.
Perfect
I mean,
ring.
I tried everything. I tried all these creative, cool names, but they were all taken. So, the simplest, stupidest one was the carpet guy, and it's pretty, so that's how I came up with the name. And since I didn't have a driver's license, I would just go door to door. I remember I made a flyer and I was knocking on doors on Ardmore Street in St. Clair Shores, where I was squatting in a basement over there. And the street was a half mile long. So if I did both sides of the street, it was a mile, it was about 110 houses. If I knocked on 110 houses' doors, at least 1 out of 7 of them had ugly carpet. And I just had to talk to enough of them before I'd be able to get inside the house and talk them into buying new carpet.
Right.
And so I had samples from a local distributor who was having a really tough time selling at the time because the economy was tanked back in 2009. And they gave me free samples. And then I knew a couple of installers from when I worked at Empire that, they were slow. So if any job that I could give them, they would be willing to take. And so I just went door to door. And that's how I started my business. I had no intention of ever turning it into a $30 million a year company. I mean, I never, ever, my goal was just to be able to, get a car again and
Put food
get
on
an
your table.
apartment. Yeah, because I mean we were squatting in a house that we were just waiting for the sheriff to come put the locks in the door. I mean,
Right.
house had no heat. From October to January there was no heat in the house. I mean, it was just electric space heaters because the gas was shut off. And so my goal was just as a minimalist is just to be able to survive. And so, I mean, how did I survive prior to that? As we were throwing parties in this house. We were throwing after hours parties, and we were charging people $10 a head to come in, figuring by 3 o'clock in the morning they're already drunk. They're not going to know if it's top liquor or not. And so we were just $10 a head. They could drink whatever's left, and we'd still profit a little bit, and and that's how we did it for a while. And
Right.
but at 35 years old, I remember. I know I'm kind of talking a lot, but I
No,
was I
have
was
at
30
it.
I was 35. I had just started this business, but wasn't really a business. It was just, a DBA, and I was knocking on doors and just buying carpet for $10 and selling it for 15. I mean, that's all I was doing, was making a few bucks. And we were throwing these after hour parties at this house, and it was the day before Super Bowl, and it was I was on a house arrest tether, so I couldn't leave the house from 9 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, it wasn't an alcohol tether; it was just a location tether. So I had this 100-foot extension cord for the house arrest service box and put it halfway down the driveway so I could walk out to the street and talk to my friends when they pulled up.
Oh my gosh.
But we had this party, and it was maybe 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and I smoked back then, and I needed a pack of cigarettes really bad. I was like fiending. I'm like, hey, can someone go to the store, buy me a pack of Newports? Here's $20. You can keep the change. And they were $7 a pack. So I'm like, hey, somebody will do it. Nobody would go to the store, even though it was a mile away. Out of 80 people that were in this house, nobody would leave to go buy me a pack of cigarettes. I was like, man, I'm throwing this awesome party for you guys, and nobody will take 5 minutes to go buy me a pack of smokes. And I was drunk. And so I said, you know what, screw you guys. And I ripped the tether off my ankle and I threw it on the table. And people were like, what's wrong with you? You're crazy. I'm like, I don't give up. Blah, blah, blah. I was just, thinking I'm some badass. And and I was gonna walk, but it was cold out. So like it was like the beginning of February or something. And so I come back inside the house and I call house arrest services, and I said, my tether broke off in my sleep, but I don't have any way to get up there. And they said, well, you have to come in. I said, oh, I can't. I said, I can get a ride in the morning. And so they let me come in the next morning. So I said, okay. And I got that obstacle out of the way. And there was a girl that was sleeping on the floor. She was like in a skirt and her bra, and she was passed out, and there was beer in her hand spilled off to on the wooden floor, but we didn't care because the house was in foreclosure anyways. But her purse was sitting right next to her spilled beer. And I went into her purse. And to this day, I don't even know who this girl was. And I found her keys to a Jeep. And I started going down the street, hitting the alarm button until I saw the lights flash on a car. And I don't know this girl. I just stole her car, and I'm driving to 7-Eleven to buy me a pack of cigarettes. And on the way back from buying cigarettes at 7-Eleven, I'm looking in her rear view mirror, whoever this person's rear view mirror is. And this car is flying up behind me. I'm like, oh shit, that's a cop. Can I say shit on here?
You're fine.
Okay. Oh shit, that's a cop. I mean, it's got to be. I mean, this car, I'm going 35, and this car's got to be doing 70, and it's roaring up behind me. And as I'm looking in the rearview mirror, I go over the curb on Jefferson. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to pull me over for sure. And the car goes around me. It wasn't a cop. And I just kept thinking, oh my God, if that was a cop, what would I be doing right now? I mean, that would have been 3 DUIs in 5 years, because I've got to be triple the limit. I mean, I was hammered. And I'm driving. I mean, they're going to find out whose car is this. I don't know. This person doesn't know me. So I'm going to get busted for driving a stolen car. I'm going to prison. I'm not going to county jail here. I'm going to be going away for 2 to 5 years.
You've been gone.
And I got back home, well, to the house that I was living in, the basement. And I just like, holy crap, man, that like, what am I thinking? What am I doing? I just had this realization, like, holy crap, and then I started looking around and I was like, man, none of these people had my back to even go buy me a pack of cigarettes, but I'm calling these people my best friends. These are my people that I would do anything for, but they wouldn't even go buy me a pack of cigarettes. And then the next day was a Super Bowl party, and I stayed sober that entire day. From I went to house arrest services at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I blew all zeros because I had like 8 or 10 hours or so before it all cleared out of my body, and so I luckily passed it. And they said if the tether comes off again, you've got to report within 1 hour, blah blah blah. And they gave me that really hard warning, and then I never had to get another warning again. But I stayed sober that next day. And since it was Super Bowl, everybody was drunk by like 7 o'clock at night. It wasn't even late, and everyone was hammered. And people are coming up to me, hugging me. Joe, you're the best, man. You're the coolest mother effer around, man. Man, I fucking love, excuse me, I love you, bro. And they're slobbering and they're repeating themselves 20 times. And I'm the only sober one of this house of 70 or 80 people. And I'm just getting annoyed. I'm like, is this how I am when I'm this drunk? Like I'm just getting angry. And and I remember I kicked everybody out of this house. It wasn't even my house to kick many people out of, but I kicked everybody out by like 10
So
o'clock
you
that night.
gotta go.
And 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 I just remembered, like I was thinking to myself, I said, last night, if that was a cop, I'd be in county jail right now on my knees. Hey God, I know I haven't asked you for anything in quite a while since last time I was in trouble, but can you please get me out of this? I swear to God, I'll never ever screw up ever again. I promise I'll change my life. I promise I'll never drink again. I'll never hang around these people again. I promise I'll never do this. I'll never do that. Just help me get out of this one last time. And that'd have been like my 100th time asking for that one last time. And I'd be begging to be in work release and not have to go to prison and not have, all these different things. And I'm thinking to myself, if I did go to prison, who in this room of people that say they're my best friend, that are saying how much they love me and how great of a friend I am to
Who would
them,
be there?
who would go visit me, let alone spend an hour to fill out the paperwork to be on my visitors list? None of them. They wouldn't even go buy me a pack of cigarettes. So I realized at that moment, like my life was more out of control at 35 than it was when I was 15 years old, in and out of Macomb County juvenile, Macomb County Youth Home at 380 North Rose Road, Mount Clemens. I still remember the address because I lived there. And I said, something's got to change, and all these people, these great people that I saw from the time I was in my late teens to my, early 30s, maybe, that were really successful, all these specific piece of advice that they always gave to me. And I just kind of, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I went in one ear and out the other. I knew better. And my ego was just so crazy that I was just a menace, man. And I didn't realize how screwed up I was. I was so checked out. And anyways, that was my first day sober in a long time. And in a long, long time. I mean, because even on those days that they would call my color to blow the next day, or to take a pee test the next day, I figured out a way to get around that. You know what I mean? And so it was the first time that I didn't drink for a long, long time. And then I think maybe I went maybe a week, and I pretended that I was in prison. If I was in prison, I wouldn't be able to hang around my friends. I wouldn't be able to smoke cigarettes. I wouldn't be able to drink. I wouldn't be able to go to the club. I wouldn't be able to do anything. This is all I would be able to do is, and I watched The Secret over and over again. And I listened to the audiobook, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen Covey, because my old boss used to, speak so highly about it. And this guy was at 30 years old, he was a millionaire and he came from nothing. So I said, you know what, I'm going to start listening to what these successful people were telling me to do instead of trying to listen to my way of doing things.
Right.
And then I reached out to Tim and I got back into AA, and I was introduced to AA when I was young. I was only like 16 years old when I went to my first meeting. And that's because I was locked away in a boarding school out in Massachusetts. And you can either do the work and the labor and stuff that they made the kids do, or else you can go to recovery meetings. So I went to the recovery meetings and said I was an alcoholic when I never drank. I think I had one sip of beer up in that point in my life, but I said I was an alcoholic just so I could go to the meetings and not have to do all the hard labor shit that they were doing. And but what was great about that was at a very young age, I knew there was something that I saw work for other people. And I never thought I was one of those people. I never thought I would ever be an alcoholic, and but I saw that it could work for these people. So when I decided I was no longer going to smoke cigarettes and I was no longer going to drink alcohol anymore, AA was right there. And I saw it work for other people. So I dove in. And I I remember somebody talking about, making sure when somebody's speaking at a meeting to not look at your phone, not look at the floor, not look at your fingernails, not look at your shoelaces, not to stare off into space, but to look into their eyes so you can practice active listening and really try to listen intently for what the messages they're saying. whether it's something you agree with or not. And
Right.
so I practiced doing that. And then when people were reading the promises, and I started, and then within a few months, because I was sober, those promises started coming true in my life, little by little, like little glimpses of them. And I was like, holy crap, some of the stuff really works. And then from watching the Secret documentary on YouTube, making a vision board and doing all these things, these little things just started working. And then I started thinking about writing goals down, and I started writing goals down instead of just thinking what I wish in my head. Because my old boss used to say, if you wish in one hand and you shit in the other one, which one's going to get full faster? The one with substance. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and so he says, if you write down your goals instead of just, thinking about them in your head, it's the difference between making a plan and having a wish list. And so I just started remembering all these things that my old bosses and my old mentors and people that I looked up to a long time ago were telling me to do that I just refused to do. And I said, my life is more out of control at 35. Maybe I should shut up and listen and use my 2 ears and one mouth in that proportion. And I started doing what they were telling me to do. And my life just started working. I mean, I still didn't have a driver's license for 3 or 4 years, 5 years almost before I got my full license back. Um, and I remember setting these stupid goals because in one of the audiobooks that I listened to, they said, start with the end in mind, but make the most ridiculous, unheard of goals that you could possibly imagine. Things that are absolutely so far out of reach, just a wish, but something
Right.
that, man, wouldn't it be cool if you could walk on the moon one day? Wouldn't it be cool if you could be a millionaire? Wouldn't it be cool if you could, have a Lamborghini and own it? You know what I mean? All these
Right.
crazy, unheard of, ridiculously far-fetched goals, but just write them down and then work backwards and try to think of what would be the halfway point to that goal? What would be the 25% way to that, and put checkpoints along the way and make a roadmap. And the example was made, I think, in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. They were talking about, or no, it was in The Secret, actually. Said that, I think it was the guy that wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. I can't think of his name, but he was talking about if you're driving from California to New York, your headlights can only see like 50 feet. And then when you get to that 50 feet, another 50 feet, and then another 50 feet. And he said, just start with the end in mind and just and visualize the map, of how to
At
get from
50
point A to
feet.
point B to point C. Yeah. And so that's what I did. And even though it was some completely far-fetched, I was knocking on doors trying to sell carpet to people I didn't know, and I couldn't drive anywhere. So I was doing it just within that area that I lived. And I started selling. And when I started selling, I started making money. And I said, holy shit, I'm making just as much money as I had when I had a job and a car and I'm doing it for myself. I'm like, this is pretty great. And then I started thinking, like when I was a salesperson for Empire, I always wanted to make 100,000 a year. I saw these salespeople make 120, 130,000 a year. And I always made like 85, 90, but that's usually because I worked for like 3 weeks and then I'd save up a couple $1,000 and then I'd fuck off for the next 2 weeks and go broke. I'd go to Miami and blow it up my nose or on a bunch of booze or some shit or strip clubs. And then I'd be broke and I'd have to go back to work for 3 more weeks till I saved up again, paid my bills, and then partied again. And so I
Right.
would work for 3/4 of the year, and I never really crossed the finish line and actually made 100,000 a year. So I made this goal of make $100,000 this year, and it's impossible. I don't even have a car. I have no driver's license. I have no job. I mean, I'm living in my buddy's house. It wasn't even his because it was just, foreclosed. And I said, there's no way. But I said, you know what? I'm going to write it down anyways. And then that was the end goal, is to make $100,000 for myself that year. And I started in April, and I had till the end of the year to do it. And so I said, okay, well, let's work backwards. What would that take? Well, it would mean that I'd have to be in front of 3 customers each day, and I'd have to sell 2 out of the 3. So how do I get in front of 3 customers and actually get into their living room and show them carpet? Well, if only 1 out of 7 people is in the market for carpet, but 2 out of 3 people are at home, I've got to knock 30 doors to talk to one person. So if I knock 90 doors in a day, I'll talk to. So I just worked backwards and figured out what it would take, how many doors that I'd have to knock in a day in order to sell 2 out of 3 jobs. And if I sold 300,000 in a year, and 1/3 of it was the carpet, 1/3 of it was the labor, and 1/3 of it went to me. If I sold 300,000 from April until the end of December,
You got your
then I would
100,000.
make my 100K. So I
Yeah.
wrote sticky notes. 3 leads a day equals 100K, or 3 leads a day equals 300K. And I put these sticky notes everywhere. And by that time, I started dating this girl, and we lived in her condo. She was renting a condo in Harrison Township. And I tell you what, that was the best thing that ever happened to me because she kept me focused. And best thing. I mean, she was goal driven, and when I was coming off track, she was She was right there to kick me in the ass, and she stopped drinking just to keep me sober. And I mean, that was the best thing that ever happened at that point in my life. And that, I don't know where I'd be without that girl, honestly. I mean, we only dated for a year and a half or 2 years. She wound up marrying one of my best friends. Um, after her and I broke up, obviously, she wasn't cheating on me. She was a good girl. I was just an idiot.
Some people come
Um,
in your life for a reason.
but I tell you what, man, I mean, and those year and a half to 2 years, that first year I did over $300,000. It was the beginning of December and I started counting my money. I'm like, holy shit, I already made over $110,000 for myself. Like, what, how did that even happen? I just made more money with no driver's license, no car, no job. I did this all on my own. So I said, shit,
It made
let's
more
go
than
even,
what you thought you were going to make.
yeah. And I said, let's go even more unrealistic. Let's go for 1 million next year. Let's say
Right.
how do I sell $1 million of that? If I sell 1 million, I'm going to make 300,000. I mean, let's go for it. I mean, it's not going to happen, but if I fall short, shit, I'll maybe like 200. And we did 1.6 million the second year. I'm like, man, this goal shit really works. And then I made the vision board. I started doing all these really lofty things. Like my old boss, he always wanted a Rolls Royce. So I put a picture of, he was my mentor. So I cut out a picture of his face and then put it on top of a Rolls Royce. And my mom's dream car was a yellow Corvette convertible. And because her sister got one when she was young, and my sister, her husband bought it for her. And so my mom always wanted a yellow Corvette because she was jealous of her younger sisters getting one. And so I put that on my vision board. And I swear, my mom's 70th birthday was at 8, 9 years ago. I bought her a yellow Corvette, paid cash for it,
That's awesome.
and then I bought my old boss a Rolls Royce. And so in those first 4 years of business, going from nothing, and I still didn't even have a driver's license at the 4 year mark, but my business was up to $6 million a year in sales at 4 years.
Right.
And I was making a lot of money, and I was reinvesting it into my business so I could grow the business. But what happened during that period of time, though, my confidence grew because I saw the things, the promises that they talk about in recovery started really coming true. But I confused that with, instead of we did it, me did it. It became I did that. It wasn't my surrender that did it. It was my strength that did it. I was delusionalized. I was really thinking it wasn't. I stopped going to meetings probably 3 years into that stretch of sobriety, and my ego, my confidence that came with the success inflated my ego to where I started believing, thinking completely irrational again. And I just wasn't acting out. I wasn't picking up, but I was dishonest. At that point, I was with another girl that we were together for a few months, and then she got pregnant, and we split up, and then we got back together, and we had the baby, and I promised that I would do everything I could to raise this kid with her, and we moved in together, and so I was a dad, and by the time my kid was not even 2 years old, I was cheating on her. Like I was just awful. I mean, I was, I mean, and I used every excuse. She was a bitch. She hates me. She doesn't even sleep next to me. She sleeps downstairs and I sleep upstairs. So I have every right to do this. She doesn't give me affection. She treats me like a doormat of the own house that I pay for. Like this egotistical narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
And I believed that shit that I was selling myself. And so here I am, screwing around with girls in other states when I would travel. And then I started dating this girl that I'm actually with today that, her and I've been together for years now, and I'm good to that one. But I was just horrible. And I started drinking again. And when I started drinking again, I hated my life. I realized that I was really going down. I was gonna lose everything again because
Is
I was
that where
my
you hit rock bottom?
no, that was I thought would be my rock bottom. Was I was in Miami, and the the first time I really got drunk, because I tried to manage my drinking. I said, as long as I only have two and I don't lose my judgment, then I'll be
You'll be
okay.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as I don't have more than two, I can't get a drunk driving. As long as I don't get, because at that point I got my license back.
Right.
As long as I don't have more than two, then none of these bad things can happen to me. And I was down in Miami, and I was at a trade show down there, and there was the guys that owned the distributorship where I was buying my flooring from were down there for the same trade show, and they've never been to Miami. Well, when I used to promote nightclubs, I mean, I'd walk in a Nikki Beach, and it could be sold out, and I can get anybody in there with me for free, and they have the compass bottles and everything else because I used to, book shows there and shit. I used to, like, so all these clubs in Miami, I knew them like the back of my hand. So I wanted to show these guys a good time. And so I give my rental car keys to a guy named Denny. And I said, let's go, let's have fun. You know, I said, just don't give me the keys back because I'm going to get drunk tonight. Let's do it. And he goes, all right, you ready? Let's go. You know, and he's not an alcoholic. He just was having a good time. I'm an alcoholic. And so this was at 7 o'clock at night, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, we got kicked out of the Clevelanders. So I mean, we were going straight all the way up until that point, and they cut me off. They wouldn't serve me anymore. So I throw $100 bill on the table, and I grab this person's bottle off their table right out of their bucket and started chugging the Grey Goose. And the guy's like, "What are you doing?" You know, and he tried to grab the bottle back, and I tried to flip it behind my back and catch it, but I missed it, and I dropped and broke on the floor. And so the bouncers just threw me out onto Ocean Drive, like, get the fuck out of here. And so then he comes stumbling out after me. He goes, dude, I got a flight at 7 in the morning, man. I got to get back and get my shit ready. He goes, but I got your keys. What do you want to do with these things? Yeah, I'm like, oh shit. You know, I'm like, well, I'm not going to drive. Just give him the keys. I promise I'm not going to drive. And so I got the keys from him. And he goes, swear you're not going to drive. I'm not going to drive, man. I'm not that stupid. You know, I'm drunk, but I'm not stupid. And my phone was dead. And so I couldn't call that 444, whatever that taxi number is in Miami. And so I walk over a block over to Washington, and I go up by Crowbar. Crowbar's getting out. And there's this really good looking black chick that comes out, and I start kissing this girl out of nowhere. I didn't even get her name. I just start making out with her in front of the club. And I'm like, oh, this girl's hot, you know, and it turns out she's a hooker, you know, but I thought she liked me, you know? And so
Oh boy.
I didn't want to like be a punk and not drive. So I take her back to my car, and we drive back up to the Fontainebleau. And when we're going up to the room, and she starts telling me, you know, she wants money. I'm like, get out of here. I kick her out. And then I go to the mini bar, and I start drinking out of the mini bar, shit that I would never drink, like Tanqueray and shit that I'm like, I never drank that when I was actively drinking. And so I cleared out half the mini bar, and it's like 7 or 8 in the morning, and I was completely out of my mind. And I don't even know how I remember this because I drank so much that night. I remember the orange barrels on the side of the road, the construction barrels. I couldn't even make them out; they were just blurry. And I don't know how I didn't hit anybody or hit anything. And I just kept thinking of my son, and I kept thinking of what a horrible dad I was, and how horrible I was to my son's mom. And I was thinking how much I hated myself. Here I am again. This time I'm successful, and I'm a dad. I've got everything that I ever wanted, and I'm out of control again. And for whatever reason, I only felt this one other time in my entire life when I was 15 years old. But here I am now, 38 years old, or 39, almost 40. I was 40, and I was suicidal. And that at that moment was my lowest moment, I thought, up until that point. And I'm on the 15th floor, sitting on my balcony of the hotel room, and like, here's my couch cushion. I'm just gonna pretend I'm literally half an inch off the edge of this thing, trying to convince myself just to push forward, just to lean forward so I fall and my life will be over and I don't have to hurt anybody ever else again. Because I know if I keep drinking, I'm going to destroy my kid's life. I'm going to destroy my son's mom's life. I'm going to destroy my business. And at that point, I had 30 or 40 people that worked for me. I was going to take everybody down with me. And that was the reality. And I hated myself that bad for letting myself get out of control again, that I just wanted to die. And the pain was so great. It wasn't a fleeting thought. It stuck with me for 10 or 15 minutes. And I just didn't have the balls to do it. You know, thank God that moment I was a pussy, and I just didn't have the courage to jump
Yeah,
off.
thank God.
And I had my phone plugged in the room, and my phone kept going off, and that's what distracted me. And only thing I kept thinking, because it kept going off, and it was like 7:30 in the morning at that point. Like, why does my phone keep going off? Did something happen to my kid? And that's what got me off the ledge. And I went inside my room, and it was my friend Mark Lewis, who lived in Miami, who went to that boarding school with me. And he was in AA. He was in AA ever since we were in that boarding school together, because he was an
Oh wow.
alcoholic and he got into the program. And he says, Joe, I saw on Facebook you're in Miami. I go, yeah. He goes, Joe, you don't sound good, man. He goes, you're not drinking again, are you? I say, yeah, man, I'm fucked up, man. I broke down and started crying. And he goes, oh my God. He goes, Joe, it's 7 in the morning. What's going on? He goes, I'm coming there. Where are you at? You know, and I told him I was at the Fontainebleau, and he drove right there, and he sat with me in the hotel room, and he just hugged me for like 2 hours. And he says, you're getting back into recovery, man. You got to get back in the program. And he goes, you're going to do 90 meetings in 90 days. I'm like, Mark, I'm not talking that shit right now, blah, blah, blah. And he drugged me to a meeting, a noon meeting. And I was still drunk at noon. And he drugged me to that meeting. He goes, don't share, just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to this meeting with him. And after the meeting, you know, he took me to eat. And I started, you know, clearing my brain a little bit. He goes, I'm going to be your sponsor. and you're going to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I said, Mark, I don't got time. I got a business to run. I'm a dad. He goes, fuck you. He goes, excuse me. Now I'm swearing like crazy. You almost jumped. You wouldn't, none of those people would have had you. You're lucky you're alive right now. You're going to do 90 meetings in 90 days, no matter what. I'm going to kick your ass. You're going to do it. And I listened to him, and I got back in the program. And at that time, I realized that I hit such a low that I was suicidal. I was going to throw my life away and let my kid grow up without his dad, because of how I was feeling.
Right.
And if I was that low, it could never be lower than that. And so I said, there's no way I'm going to fall out of program ever again. I'm going to go to every meeting. And so for the next 7 or 8 months, I went to meetings every day. I got a sponsor after Mark that just kicked the shit out of me. A really good sponsor that called me out every day,
You need it.
busted my balls and really drill sergeant in me in the right way. But he always headed a first step table. And I went to that meeting in Royal Oak at Noontimers, and Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I sat at that first step table over and over and over again. I never started working on any other steps besides just 1, 2, and 3. And then it was suggested to me that I should do a 4th step. And I kept saying, I'm not ready for that. I still have a problem with 3 sometimes. I was such a perfectionist that I just procrastinated. I found every excuse not to do a 4th step. And at the time, my sponsor's name was Noel at the time. He's in his 80s now. He was really involved with another group called the Landmark Forum, and he suggested that I go do that. And it was a 3-day workshop, and you really get into some really deep stuff in this workshop. And there's about 100 people in there, and you really get vulnerable and talk about some really deep stuff that, take it to the grave stuff, and
Right.
it's just a really, really safe place. And you see people come out of the closet and say that they're gay, and people that that were like 2 minutes ago you would think they're the toughest guy in the room. People were just getting vulnerable and raw and honest.
Right.
And I had some real breakthroughs when I was there, and so I encouraged other people to do that same sort of thing because it works so well for me. And then I wanted to try to correct the wrongdoings I had in my relationship with my son's mom. And I suggested that she did it too, because it was something that I think could, if we both were on the same wavelength,
Benefit
that we
both
could,
of you.
yeah, we can get our relationship back together.
Absolutely.
And even though I was so far out in left field and I didn't even own up to the stuff that I was doing up until that point, she knew, but I didn't think she knew, and she did it. And when she went into that meeting, when she did her weekend, there were 3 people at that same group that sat at my first step table that I sat at Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week. And she shared stuff in that room about our relationship, and that I wasn't ready to come clean with, and I felt ashamed of. And these people knew about secrets that I had that she shared, and I was so ashamed to go back to that meeting, and that I went into victim mode and said, "Well, I'm just not going to go back." And so
Right.
that was my excuse to not go to meetings again. And I just was a dry drunk again within just a few weeks. I was my thought process, my resentments, my fears, my anxiety, everything was just out of control again, and I had no place to talk about it. I was just kept it all in. And it was just maybe 6 months after that I picked up again. And I thought up until that point, I'll never pick up again. I'll never, ever, ever pick up again. After being suicidal, no way, no way. That pain was so great that I'll never, ever, ever pick up ever again. And I did. And I went out for probably another 6 months, and I was drunk driving again, and the cop pulled me over, and I got off of that by technicality, but I should have probably got in trouble for that, and that would have been felony DUI, and I just got real lucky. Um, and I remember sitting on my handcuffs in the police car when and I was in the Lamborghini that night, and they pulled me over, they impounded my Lamborghini, and I was just being an asshole to the cop. I'm like, "Hey, you want to race, fucker?" Out the window. He said, "What?" "Oh shit, I thought you were my friend." Because I'm not your friend. He goes, "Pull." And so that's right. And when I was sitting on my handcuffs, I looked up at the billboard on the side of the road, and my company has billboards and TV commercials everywhere. And the billboard that it was off on the side of the road when we were stopped at the traffic light, I looked up, was a picture of my son and I. And it was a picture saying, "Be wise, call the carpet guys." And it was my son on my lap, and my son's holding a little phone in his hand. My favorite words at that point in my life, the best sound that life could ever serve me, was hearing my little boy discover something or accomplish something when he took his first, when he learned how to do certain things, say, "Look at me, Dad. Look at me, Dad." And all I could think of that day when I'm sitting on my handcuffs, when I'm looking at his face on the billboard, was, look at me, son. Your dad's a fucking idiot. This is your dad. And in that moment, I said, you know what, if being suicidal didn't stop me, maybe my son can stop me, and so when I got out of jail that next morning, I dove right back into AA, and I got another kick-ass sponsor. I had some, and I had to do a fourth step. I had to get through that shame, the pain, the guilt, the resentment, the fear, the insecurities, all that stuff. I had to own it, and
Yeah.
I had to do a really solid fifth step. And I actually found the questions that they did at my old boarding school, which came from the Overeaters Anonymous program, how the honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, 155 inventory questions, and it goes really, really deep through a really solid fourth step. I didn't want to just write it on a couple sheets of paper. I mean, this is 150 typewritten pages that I wrote of everything that I ever stole, anything that I ever, any person I ever cheated, anything that I've ever done, every bit about my relationship with my parents, everything about my entire life I had on there. And I remember when I went to do my fifth step, I took my old sponsor, my current sponsor that was at the time, to Hawaii. And I said, I want no distractions. I just want to do this the right way. And then there was another guy that had 30 years in recovery that was friends of Tim's. And so me and these three guys, all three of them, Tim had at the time, I think 24 years or so, or 22 years, I think he had at the time. And I think Randy had 37 years and Scott had 32 years. So here I am doing my fifth step with these guys. And I was so ashamed when I was reading this stuff that I caught myself wanting to lie as I'm reading it. There was parts I wanted to skip that sentence. And I said, no, I missed it. I'm going to go back. I forced myself through it. I forced this honesty that I didn't want to be honest about. And the best thing that ever happened to me was I had my head down, and I remember hearing Tim say, it's okay, man. Me too. And Scott say, yeah, me too. And Randy saying, well, that's a list. He goes, but some of that shit makes me feel a little better, and some of it makes me feel a little worse. And I remember hearing these guys say this stuff and make light of it. And I thought I was the worst person on earth. And I was so ashamed. And these are my take to the grave secrets that I would never share with another human being, that I didn't even want to believe that I did myself. For
Right.
years I covered and denied. And after I shared that, that was the first time out of years and years of being in and out, being introduced to the program, diving in, falling out, diving in, jumping in, falling out, whatever, that I actually felt really part of the we instead of the me. And that was the first time that I really felt like a member of AA.
Because you
And
were
at that,
actually listening and realizing that you weren't alone and you
yeah,
weren't the only, person out there destroying their life in so many horrible ways, that
yeah,
there are other people's, and they've done probably worse, or they've just right on the line with you,
yeah.
but the whole time you're feeling alone.
It was the first time that I ever felt acceptance,
Right.
because these are things that I never accepted in myself.
Right.
And knowing that, and when I started to be, when other people began to forgive me from, just even though these are people that I didn't actively do anything against, but they accepted me, which gave me a feeling of somewhat of forgiveness and acceptance. I began to eventually start to forgive myself.
Right.
And when I started being able to forgive myself, I also found that came parallel with that was it became easier for me to forgive other people and find acceptance in other people's actions that I thought was unacceptable. And so when we read acceptance in the beginning of these meetings or at the end of the meetings, those words started to make sense. I heard it 1,000 times, but they went in one ear and out the other. But now it started to make sense. And
Yep.
so little by little, these little bits of the program really started to kind of change me, and change the way I looked at things, and changed the way my thought processes worked. Up until then, I was, I'll get what I'm going to get. As long as I'm not doing this, I'm okay. Like it really changed. It changed me to want to do better in this world, better in the community, better to help other alcoholics besides just having them help me. I wanted to be, of service to the program. I wanted to be of service in my community. I wanted to be of service in my church. I didn't just go there to because I feared God. Now I actually wanted to take part in stuff. I wanted to participate. And that's when it really started for me. And that was about 4.5 years, little under 4.5 years ago. And I can't say that I'm ever going to be fixed. I could go out and drink again tomorrow. I mean, I know that within a week, if I don't go to meetings on a regular basis, my thoughts start to get goofy again. My resentments are, I get resentful still, and if I'm not going to meetings, those I can't process through those thoughts. All I just think about is how I was victimized and this person's a motherfucker,
Right.
and I stay there. And those resentments don't hurt the other person. They hurt me. They hurt the
Yeah.
people around me
You're the
because
only victim of your own madness.
I'm the biggest victim of it, but also my kid's a victim of it. My girlfriend's a victim of it. My employees are a victim of it. The
Yeah.
people that I interact with, my parents are a victim of them because I'm short. I get frustrated fast. I don't give them my full attention. I mean, so I've got a long way to go in this program, but I believe that if I don't if I don't stop going to meetings, I have a great chance at staying sober. And if I keep going around and hanging around the people that are really working their program, a sponsor that has a sponsor, not just a sponsor, but a sponsor that has a sponsor that's coachable himself, and really starting and choose my role models that are really, really doing the deal
Right.
and really trying to live a life of rigorous honesty, that their word is absolute titanium, that they're not still out there shooking and jiving and doing all the shit that the quick hustle or trying to get they're not self-centered. And if I choose to hang around those people, their habits start to rub off on me. The way they think, the things they desire start to kind of shape the way my thought process starts to work. And
Absolutely.
so when my business has been doing about 30 million a year in sales the last 3 years now, 2.5 years or so. And my building's at 14 in John R. And I got to the point where at first I was leasing a little space in this building. And then I leased some more office space and some more warehouse space. And before you know it, I'm renting, a third of the space. And then finally I was able to buy the building from the owner, from
Nice.
the guy who used to own 1-800 Hanson's, Brian Elias. And so I bought that building, and one of the things I wanted to do with that building is I wanted to have like a little Alamo club in there, because I knew that because work has always been an excuse for me to not go to meetings.
Right.
I'm busy with this. I'll have to go to the meeting tomorrow. Or, oh, I got this important thing I got to do today. I'm going to miss the meeting. I'll have to go to the meeting tomorrow.
There's
You
no
know,
reason to miss it when you're at
There-
work because you have it.
we put meetings
That's
right there in the
awesome.
business. So Monday through Friday, there's a meeting at the business at noon for anybody that's, and I allow people that are at work that want to get into recovery. They can stay on the clock and go to the meeting and
That's
still and
awesome.
still stay on the clock because they're helping themselves. And if they help themselves, they'll better help the company anyways. Some of the other employees, they don't like that, but it's something that I choose to do. I'm the owner, so I can make the rules.
You do what you want.
you know, so but there's a lot of people from outside that come, and sometimes we have 25 people there. I mean, it's a great meeting,
That's
and
awesome.
I also, when the pandemic hit, I watched how many people that had 15 or 20 years of sobriety or clean time fall out because they couldn't go to meetings.
Yeah.
Every one of us is vulnerable. Any one of us who are addicts or alcoholics can eventually get picked off if we're not staying in the center of a pack. We've got to be with our
100%.
tribe. And if we're not with our tribe, we're vulnerable. It's just a matter of time, and if we're not going to pick up, we're emotionally and mentally so fucked up that, we might as well be drunk. It's probably
Right.
worse to be a dry drunk because we don't have the anesthesia to get us out of the pain,
Yeah.
so I watched the people that adjusted during the pandemic when there was no meetings that they couldn't go to in a lot of places, and they started going to in the rooms or on Zoom, and when the Zoom meetings started becoming popular. And so we made this room. We put that owl cam in the middle of the room and with a big 70-inch monitor on there. So even when I was in when Tim and I were in whatchamacallit, down in Central America, Costa Rica last week, we still went to the meetings, because the meetings are on Zoom also. So the
Yep.
same group of people that are in my home group, I can still meet with anywhere around the world. All I got
Yeah.
to do is go to 12steproom.org and then click on the noon meeting, and boom, I'm in the noon meeting. And
Yep.
there I
You were
am with
telling me
the
about
same
that. That's
fam,
awesome.
and it's awesome. I love it. 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 So I
That is
really
awesome.
literally had, and it was selfish of me to do it because
It's
I
not
needed to. I needed to.
selfish.
Well,
I don't look at it as selfish because
it's
you're
okay.
helping other
It,
people.
it, it's a selfish. It was a selfish motive that was done for the right reason. In other words, I have to be somewhat selfish in my recovery. I've got to put my recovery first.
You
I've got to
do.
put my recovery before my kid. I got to put my recovery before my girlfriend. I got to put my recovery before my parents. I got to put my recovery before my business, because if I don't stay sober, none of those things will be in my life. I'll lose
Exactly.
all of those things. So I've got to put first things first and put my recovery first. So if I have to make sure that there's a path that no matter what, if I'm at that building or if I'm halfway around the world, that I never miss a meeting, then so be it. And in the process, yes, it's helped a lot of people. I mean, we have a
Oh,
really great
absolutely.
space. It's probably one of the nicest meeting rooms that are around there. And but it's really, really great. And so that was my motive for doing that, was to make sure that I never have an excuse to fall off again. Because if I, once I find an excuse that I can live with, I take it. That's what I've done. I mean, I never thought after being suicidal, I would ever risk, that I would ever fall out of recovery ever again. And I did.
Right.
So
But
if I
that's
know
a
that I'm
disease.
capable of
That's
that
the part of
happening,
the disease.
yeah, yeah. So I think I have a good chance of staying sober if I can make a meeting every day, and I can
Absolutely.
be around other people that I can listen to and share with.
One thing that you were saying earlier is that you had your goals. And I did a little bit of, I did a little bit of research on you. And one thing that I loved is that knowing that you had your goals, but you brought that into your company as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I did see that you have a daily goal for everybody in the company of
yeah,
every every aspect of like where
yeah,
you how much you want to do, what do you want to achieve. I think
yeah,
that's really cool. Can you give me a little detail more about that, like what more of the goals is there? Because like I
yeah.
said, I only seen a little bit of what you did, but not
Well, what we did at work is I put them on a Google Drive, so that way each of the managers can write their goals down for the year. Like everybody has long-term goals, like they said, start with the end in mind. So what's your lifelong goals? And
right.
then what are your 5 to 10 year goals? What are your goals for the next year? What are your goals for this month? What are your goals for this week? What are your goals for today? And then also on that same list is what 12 things that I'm grateful for this morning. So if we do that every single morning, if we start each morning looking at what are my lifelong goals, so it's like reading your mission statement every day. What are my lifelong goals? What do I want to? What kind of impact do I want to have in this world? What am I going to achieve or accomplish or shed love onto in this lifetime? What are my goals for this year and 5 years? What are my goals for this month? If I look at my long term, short term, and monthly and weekly, daily goals each morning, if I have that on the front of my consciousness, just like that 3 leads a day equals 300K, those sticky notes I put everywhere inside the
Right.
refrigerator, by my toothbrush, and the rearview mirror of my girlfriend's car. I mean,
Everywhere.
it was annoying to her because it was clutter all over the apartment or condo that we were renting, but it kept me on point. I couldn't open up the fridge and without picking up the milk and seeing 3 leads a day equals 300K. If it's constantly in my face, if I have a habit of reading those goals every single day, I'm going to gravitate closer towards achieving those goals. Now, if it's just in my head, just like my old boss said, it's a wish. And a wish,
Right.
you wish in one hand, shit in the other one, which one's going to get the one of substance. So if I write my goals down on pieces of paper that I have to see every day, not folded up in my wallet that I don't see until next week, but if it's in my face, I have a much better chance of keeping that conscious plan going. Someone
Right.
said a long time ago, I listened to an audiobook or something. They said that, the 6 hours before somebody goes on vacation is the most productive time of their week, or else the day that they go to the grocery store, because they write down their shopping list. And as they're going up and down the aisle with the carts, they're scratching these goals off the list, and the things that are on the list. And it's the same thing. So, it's better when they're on paper, but the next best thing, we put them on a Google Drive. So that way each person can, in every department they have it, and then their
Right.
managers can check and see where their staff's heads at. I mean, they don't have to be business related goals or work goals. They could be personal goals as well.
Exactly. And
And
that's one thing I
so, but
loved about it. You can use those goals as anything part in your life, as
yeah,
going, trying to stay clean, as, wanting to do better in your, just in your personal life and into
yeah,
your business life and in your recovery life. And that's kind of why I asked you, like, give a little bit more so, the viewers understand like where to set up, how to, like get it going. You
yeah.
know
It's
what I
better to
mean?
do it on paper. And having that vision board where where I cut out the pictures, like I saw somebody else do that. So I just kind of copy. I'm not an originator. I'm just a good duplicator. And so I look at what other people do that are successful. I just try to copy what they do. But by writing the goals out, I found to be much more effective than typing them in a Google Drive, because I don't see them again until the next morning when I'm writing my goals the next day. Whereas if they're on pieces of paper plastered around everywhere, I can't miss them.
Right.
But for the purposes that I have it with the company, the person that's in charge of my order entry department can see all the goals of her people, and they can see her goals. My warehouse staff can look at their goals, and all of my managers can see each other's goals and what have you. So it just kind of keeps us all kind of in line a little bit. But idealistically, I mean, if you're doing it for yourself or for just a couple people, do it on paper. It's much better. But that's the way we set it up, because we have 60 people or 70 people on the goal sheet.
Right.
But it works, because if people are rowing the boat, paddling the boat the same direction, or at least in the same mindset, and the people that are in the different departments of work can see where the things that the manager wants to accomplish, then the synergy is much better within the company. It's just it creates a forward moving culture rather than a stagnant culture. And so
Right.
for me at least that sort of thing works. It's worked really well in my business. It's worked for me very well personally. Like I said, I don't have any of the answers. I just have some of them that I've watched from other people that seemed to work for me when I applied what they did. So
Right. Yeah. Joe, one thing I gotta say is that I appreciate everything that you gave us tonight. You literally answered every single question on my sheet without me even having to say anything. And I love it. I love your enthusiastic, you're on a roll, and I love it, because you have passion, and that's what and that's great, because people need to see that. It's like you hit every mark that I needed to ask you, and you're just on a roll because you have passion of everything that you went through and where you came from and all the hurt and the mess ups and everything along the lines, and just where you are today. You should be very proud of yourself. And like you
yeah,
said, you only have to worry about today, and somebody told me, they're like, worry about today, but tomorrow looks pretty good. As of now, tomorrow looks pretty good. But I want you to know that I appreciate you, and I've known you for a long time. I've known you back in, when you used to promote the bars, and the person that I see today, you're amazing. You're doing great. Your son, he's so active in your life, and that's amazing, because not a lot of people have that. A lot of people don't have that right now, because they're out there and they're seeing, they don't see that they can move forward. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I want people to know that it is possible. Everything is possible. You got to have the daily goals. You have to have the strength. You have to go to meetings every day. Like you said, takes one day and you can fall off the wagon, because always in your head, you're always thinking,
well,
you
that's where
know,
service really comes in too, though. Is we can't keep it if we can't give it away. And I've always, for so many years, the program was. I mean, I'd go to meetings, I would share in meetings, I'd listen in meetings, and then I never hung out with the people outside of meetings. I was
right,
still an outsider, even though I was there every day. I was still an outsider, and it's really wasn't until I wanted to, till I actually wanted to do service, and my program works good for me because I stand for other people's greatness. I want other people to experience the miracles of what AA has done for me. I want them to
right,
be able to experience that greatness in their life, and the awesome things that come along with it, and all those blessings that God gives us. And it also works in my business, because I find out what made my business work when it works the best, is when I'm actively trying to help other people achieve their greatness.
right,
It's not about me, it's about we. And if I run my business the same way as I run my, that I run my program within my own life, um, it just seems to work. It just seems to work. And I find out that the more I'm able to give to other people, the more just, and I don't do it to get back. I do it to give and to help, and out of a place of love and care and empathy. But it just comes back to me tenfold. And
right.
so, I mean, God's really good. I mean, I've really been blessed. I've been very, very lucky that that God's given me the chances that he's given me. And that's the same kind of compassion that I have for usually most of my employees as well. Because I know that nobody's perfect, because God knows I was the biggest fuck up there was, so,
Right. No,
if I could turn it around, I think anybody can if they really want to.
absolutely. Absolutely. But again, I want to appreciate you taking the time out, because I know you're a busy man, you have a company, you have a family, and sorry it is, it's late, but again, I appreciate you doing this with me and taking the time out and putting your story out there so people know that they're not alone, and there's hope. There's always hope, and they're never alone. We're always here. It doesn't matter what door you open, we're here, and but again, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the man that you are today.
Thank you.
And I know your son is, and the family and everybody. And keep keep on coming back, because you're doing a
Will
good
do.
job.
Will do.
But again,
Thanks
I
for having me.
appreciate you. But
Thanks for having me.
absolutely. Again, thank you, Joe.
And if anybody needs new carpet or flooring, be wise, call the carpet guys,
There
8554.
you
My guys,
go.
the carpet guys. No, I'm kidding.
Speaking
No,
of
but
which, we need carpet.
way more importantly than that. I mean, carpet's fuzzy setup. Who cares? Or whatever. That's carpet. But more importantly than any of that stuff, if anybody ever needs a meeting, any day, 7 days a week, 4 o'clock in the morning, it doesn't matter when or where. If you go to 12steproom.org, there's two links on there. One is, well, there's actually more, there's information of the readings and everything else, but there's two meeting links on there. One is for the local meeting that meets Monday through Friday at noon. It also
Okay.
meets Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. in person as well as on Zoom. But also the 24-hour meeting is also on there, one click away. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, if you're just in a moment, you need someone to talk to, but you can't call somebody, or you don't feel that you just need to reach out to another AA or NA, you can hop on at 12steproom.org and then click on the worldwide 24/7 meeting. And there's usually about 100 people in that meeting. And usually it's actually a pretty good meeting. Usually when there's meetings that are really big like that on Zoom, it's actually monitored very, very well. It's a
That's
great meeting.
awesome.
So I definitely encourage anybody to check that out. Again,
Absolutely.
12steproom.org.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you.
And you have a blessed night.
You do the same. Thank you so much, Brandi.
Thank you.